Welcome back. In this episode, we are going to talk about the unbearable season. And if you've ever been in an unbearable season in your life, you know those seasons can last a few months, a few years, decades. And for extreme dieters or competitors, this season is one that I want to talk about and share with you my own personal experience and talk about this season that nobody really wants to talk about. If you've ever competed or if you've been the kind of person who takes dieting to its absolute extreme, you know what I mean when I say unbearable season. It isn't just prep, it's not just the food and the training and the cardio, it's what it does to your mind. It's the version of yourself that shows up when you're deep enough in it that you don't even recognize yourself anymore. I know that version intimately because I lived inside of it for a long time. Today, I'm going to talk about something I don't talk about publicly very often. I do on my page a bit, but I'm going to get into like real stuff with my eating disorder history, how I walked into the industry right out of treatment, how competing became for me an eating disorder with a trophy and an audience, what the in between looks like when you know something is wrong, but you can't leave yet, and what I've watched happen to the women I've coached over the last 14 years who are walking the same road. I've coached competitors for 25 years, but truly paid attention to the metabolic consequences and the mindset consequences the last 14 years. I would say, as a coach in the beginning, I was fairly ignorant to it all. So, this episode is for you if you're in it right now, if you've been in it, if you're on the other side of it, and still trying to figure out who you are without it. And it's for anyone who loves someone who's in it and can't understand why they won't stop. So, my story, where it all started. I was a teenager when my eating disorder started. It was bulimia and anorexia, but I like to joke that I was a terrible anorexic, so I turned to bulimia. I went through a 2-year treatment program and I came out of it on the other side and I thought, okay, I'm done with it. I'm moving forward. And then I walked straight into the competitive side of the fitness industry. I want you to sit with that for a second. I went from treatment for an eating disorder directly into an industry that rewards restriction, celebrates leanness, and calls obsession discipline. And nobody around me saw anything wrong with that, including me. I got into supplement sales. I was working on vitamins alongside pharmacists. I was eating more than I had been. I looked good. I was getting attention, getting accolades. I was coaching on the side. By every external measure, I was thriving. Underneath all of it, I was relapsing. I remember driving for work, long days on the road. I would stop at Tim Hortons and buy a dozen donuts, and I would eat all of them. And then I would pull over on the side of the highway or at a gas station and purge. And then I would drive to my next appointment and smile and sell supplements, and nobody was the wiser. That is what a relapse looks like when you're high functioning. It doesn't look like falling apart. It looks like keeping it together so well, everyone around you is impressed. So, how did competing find me? I got into competing when I was 19, 20 years old. And I want to be honest about something. I didn't fully understand what I was getting into. The first show I did, I didn't realize how heavily the judging weighed on physique conditioning. I just knew there was a diet. There was an 8 by 11 sheet of paper that I was told to follow exactly what to eat and when, and I followed it. Perfect, almost perfectly, minus the binging and purging I was doing because I couldn't manage the cravings. In that show, I placed dead last. And here's the thing. You would think that placing in my show would like, as well as the relapsing my eating disorder, would be the signal. Like, this is not for you. This isn't the right choice. This is not a safe place to be. Like, walk away. Instead, it was like someone dangled a carrot in front of my face. Now I have to prove something. And that is the thing I've watched bind women to this sport over and over again, that proving mentality. It's so fucking seductive because it takes all that pain and all of that shame and all that obsession and it gives you a full direction. It's a purpose. It makes you feel like suffering is leading somewhere. I went on to compete for 16 years. The first 6 of those years, I was continuously relapsing. Binge episodes, purging, hiding it from my spouse at the time, carrying it completely alone. And the whole time, I was still getting better on stage. And that's the crazy part. Here's what competing did for my eating disorder. It gave it a structure, it gave it rules, it gave it rewards, and it gave it a place to hide. When you're a person with disordered patterns around food in your body, rules are wonderful. They feel safe. Restriction feels like control, and control feels like the thing standing between you and total chaos. So when you hand someone like me a precise meal plan and a stage to work towards, you have just given the disorder the most sophisticated container it has ever had. And everyone around me saw me eating actual food, gaining muscle. They thought I was healthy. Like they would tell me, oh, you look so healthy and fit. Because by the standards of the world I was living in, I was doing everything right. The bulimia stopped in 2006. And I want to be clear, that was a very significant piece of progress that I never got to share with anybody because I was so deep in shame at the time that I didn't want anybody to know that I had relapsed. But that didn't mean the obsession stopped. It just changed shape. Spreadsheets, notebooks, tracking every variable, overthinking every detail of my off season, measuring how far I was from my stage body, and treating that distance like a moral failure. And when there was like camera phones, like constant progress pictures, selfies, obsessing over what show was next, what my improvement season would look like, what coach I should work with, what people thought of my package, like just endless obsession. And when you're getting rewarded for this on stage, when judges are responding to you, people are congratulating you, when you win titles like I did, it becomes a game you can justify playing with yourself. You can say, this is not a problem. I'm like super dedicated. The results are proving it. In 2008, I won the Canadian Nationals for figure. And a lot of people don't know this, but I had a broken back as a teenager. I have a condition where one of my vertebrae, my T12, slides over the bottom vertebrae. On an x-ray, it looks like a Scotty dog. It causes significant pain into my hips, instability in my lower back, and in through my rib cage. And I was at a point where I could barely stand through a full day of work. I could barely bend down to reach the bottom shelf of supplements. So I decided I wasn't going to do fitness that year because of my back. I just switched to figure instead. I won nationals with a broken back. And I thought that was something to be proud of. I mean, I guess in a way, it's totally commendable, but it was also like when I think back on it, I'm like, that's obscene. But that's what the sport does. It reframes your willingness to hurt yourself as evidence of your strength. And I haven't even gotten into the drug culture. That is its own layer entirely. Like how belonging gets weaponized inside this world, how your place in the community, how much people respect you, how much you're included becomes tied to what you're willing to do, what protocol you're on, whether you're do what it takes. Like, are you willing to do what it takes? And the answer to that question becomes part of your identity before you even know what's happening. And here's the part that nobody talks about, the part that comes before the exit. The part that most women are actually living in right now, you know something is wrong, you can feel it. Some quiet part of you has been whispering that for a while, but you haven't left. And you keep almost leaving and then not leaving, and you keep circling back. Maybe you've hired a coach to keep you eating in a way that feels like structure, like you're still in some version of a plan, even though you're not prepping for anything, because the structure feels safer than not having it. If someone is checking in on you and you have a protocol, you're not really off season, are you? You're just in a longer prep. Maybe you've registered for shows and pulled out more than once. You pay the entry fee, you start the process, and then something just doesn't click. Maybe it's legitimate, an injury, a life thing. Maybe you get far enough in to feel what was coming and you back out. And then 6 months later, you do it again. Maybe you don't even get that far. You just fucking talk about it a lot. You talk about getting your body back to stage shape. You talk about what you need to fix before you feel ready to compete again. You follow the prep accounts. You stay close to the culture. You have the conversations, but you don't pull the trigger and you don't fully walk away either. This is the in between, and it's its own kind of suffering because you don't have the identity structure of being a competitor anymore, but you haven't built anything to replace it yet either. You're just floating in this space where the old story no longer fits and the new one hasn't been written. And what makes it harder is that you're not fully equipped to look at it honestly yet. Because when you're in the season, everything feels like a mirror. Every piece of content about leaving the sport, about what extreme dieting does to you physiologically and psychologically, about healing, it all lands like it's like right at you because it is. You and all these other women who are going through the same thing, but it feels like it's only you. And you're just not ready to see that yet. So, what do you do with this feeling? You defend. You scroll past. You say, that's not me. You gossip about it. You get really pissed off. You get irritated at the person holding the mirror. You unfollow her. You tell her she doesn't understand your situation, your goals, your body, and your history. I say this with compassion, not judgment, because I've been on both sides of this. I have been so deep in my own cycle that anyone handing me a different perspective felt like a threat. And I have also been the coach on the other side, holding up the mirror and watching someone get angry at me for it. So here's what I see from the coaching side. I opened my online company in 2013. I had spent 3 years healing my own metabolism from everything I had done to it. To the last thing I wanted to do at that point in time was continue working with competitors. I didn't want to enable any part of the culture. And then I did it anyways. For the next 14 years, I continued coaching competitors, and on a very small scale and very selective scale, I still do. Because those women don't need someone to validate the process. They need someone who has been inside it, came out on the other side, and will tell them the truth. And there's not a lot of people in this industry that are willing to do that. But I want to talk to you about what it's actually like to be that person because it comes with a price. When a former competitor comes to me for metabolism work, something specific happens. A part of her knows she needs to slow down, rebuild, learn to trust the process again without it being extreme. But there is another part of her, the part still tied to the sport, still running on the old reward system, that can't tolerate it. It's too slow, it's too quiet, it feels like losing. So she pitches another prep, another aggressive protocol, something with like grit to it, something like that feels like the old version of doing something. And I see it clearly that her body is not asking for that. Her habits aren't supporting that. Her lifestyle is no longer supporting that. Everything she's showing me in her day-to-day life is telling a story about someone who is not in a place to add more intensity. Her system has already been communicating this very clearly. And deep down, she knows it. She knows she's on the struggle bus. But when I reflect that back to her, something shifts and not in the direction you'd hope. And this isn't all the time, but this is sometimes. Because I'm not just challenging her plan, I'm challenging her identity. The prep isn't a goal, it's proof that she is still who she was, that she still has access to that version of herself, that she still belongs somewhere. And when I say you're not ready for that, she hears, you are not that person anymore. And when that person is the only version of yourself you know how to be, it's fucking devastating. So I become the enemy, not because I've done anything wrong, but because the truth feels like a threat when the story you're telling yourself is the things keeping you together. I've had clients come become cruel toward me, like not frustrated, not difficult, like downright cruel. And I say that with zero judgment because I understand exactly what is driving it. When your identity is on the line, when the thing you've built your entire sense of self around is being questioned, the person telling you the truth gets cast as the villain. I've sat across from women I know are fundamentally kind, genuine, good humans and watched them speak to me in ways I know they'd be horrified by if they were in a different state. And my job in that moment is not to take it personally, it's to see through it, to see her, to keep telling the truth anyways. That doesn't mean it doesn't land. It does. It's hard. But I understand it because I was her. The truth is that what looks like resistance to me as a coach is actually a trauma response. The disorder, the identity, the belonging, all of it has been so deeply wired into how she understands herself that any information that contradicts the plan gets treated as a threat to her survival, not her goals, her survival. That's how deep this goes. And what I want you to understand, what I wish someone had said to me when I was inside it, is that her body is not failing her. Her body is protecting her. It is doing exactly what it should be doing, given what it has been through. The resistance is not weakness. The obsession is a signal. It is intelligence. She just can't hear it yet. And that's okay. My job is to keep showing up honestly until she can. What nobody prepares you for, whether you're a competitor or an extreme dieter, is what comes next. The show ends, the diet ends, the structure ends, and you are left standing in a body that doesn't look the way it did a week ago, in a life that suddenly has no clear objective, with an identity that was entirely organized around a goal that no longer exists. And it is grief. That is the only word for it. Grief for the structure, grief for the version of yourself that was allowed to be obsessed and have it called discipline, grief for the belonging that came from being inside of it. Because when you leave the sport or when you step back from the extreme dieting, you don't just lose a hobby, you lose community. You lose a language. You lose a way of measuring your own worth that, as broken as it was, at least you gave something to aim at. The identity crisis that follows is real and it is serious, and almost nobody in the fitness industry talks about it honestly because it doesn't sell anything. I stepped away from the competition world in 2016. And even with everything I knew, even with all the work I had done in my own relationship with food and my body, that transition had its own weight to it. Knowing why something is hard doesn't make it not hard. What I want you to hear is this: the unbearable season is not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is a sign that you built your entire identity inside a structure that was never designed to be permanent. And when that structure comes down, the work is figuring out who you are without it. That is not a quick fix. That's not a protocol. That is a process that takes time and real support from people who specialize in exactly this kind of thing. I'm going to wrap this up now. This is not that kind of story. What I will say is this: if any part of what I shared today sounds familiar, whether it's the hiding, the proving, the in between, the identity that lives and dies by the next cut or the next show or the next number on the scale, that is, I want you to know that what you're experiencing is very real and it is serious and you're not alone in it. Find support from someone who specializes in disordered eating and body image, not just a coach, a therapist, an eating disorder informed professional who can sit with you in the hard part of this and really like help you unravel it. You deserve more than white knuckling your way through this alone.